Greetings, everyone, and welcome to the Produce Buzzers podcast. We are so happy you have joined us today, and I think you will be too after the show is over, because you will learn a lot about fresh fruits and vegetables, how to select and store them, how to prepare and cook them, and surprising facts about their history and origin. We hope it inspires you to eat more fresh fruits and vegetables, not only for your health, but also for your delight and pleasure as you explore their amazing world of taste and delicious flavors. Eating more of them will transform your life in so many positive ways. So settle back, relax, and get ready for another delicious adventure with the Produce Buzzers. Greetings, Produce Buzzers podcast fans, and welcome to another delicious episode of the Produce Buzzers podcast. I'm Edwin Stepp, your host and executive editor of ProduceBuzz.com. I'm joined once again by Teresa Nolan, the founder and president of Produce Buzz, along with Rick Stepp and Cynthia Benedetto, both contributing editors to Produce Buzz. Fruit and veggie fans, we have a very special guest on the show today, a woman who has been making a great impact in getting more people to eat fresh fruits and vegetables through her wonderfully creative content on her website, The Produce Moms. Lori Taylor joins us today. She is the founder and CEO of the Produce Moms, a global community and certified B corporation that is on a mission to put more fruits and vegetables on every table. Lori sold fresh produce to grocery retailers for 10 years and often appears in the media as a cook and produce industry expert. Her media appearances always include innovative and inspiring ways to prepare and eat fresh produce. The Produce Moms website features hundreds of recipes and educational content authored by Lori. Her content has been featured by Oprah, Martha Stewart, GQ Magazine, Real Simple Magazine, HuffPost, StyleCaster, and more. The Produce Moms also have branded fruits and vegetables that you can buy at Walmart, Target, Whole Foods, Kroger, Safeway, Albertsons, and other grocery retailers throughout the United States. And Lori is the host of her own podcast. Guess what it's called? The Produce Moms Podcast. A seasoned keynote speaker, Lori has been a recipient of many accolades, including the inaugural Forbes Next 1000 initiative, which spotlights startup entrepreneurs that are changing the world through influence and innovation. Lori serves on the board and advisory councils to Global Women Fresh, Equitable Food Initiative, International Fresh Produce Association, and Indianapolis Public Schools. She often speaks with school officials and lawmakers to support public policy to increase the availability of fresh produce in the USDA school meals and other child nutrition programs. So she's not only a mom pushing produce to her own children, she's helping other moms get fresh produce on their children's plates. Lori lives in Indianapolis, Indiana, with her husband, 2 sons, and their Great Dane. Welcome, Lori, to the podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. We're excited to have you on and eager to hear what you
Thank you for having me, Edwin. Thanks for the warm introduction and welcome. And you're right. Anyone who has a Great Dane, like it's this weird club where it's part of our bio and it's like this grand connector that keeps us all together. He is my baby. I love him so much. His name's Duke. Someone named after Marmaduke. But anyway, so it's great to be here, and thank you all for what you do. I always say this with what we do at the Produce Moms. It's going to take a lot of voices and a lot of passionate people to change consumption behaviors and really swing that pendulum and make fruits and vegetables something that the world wants to eat, not something that, you know, people feel like they have to eat. And so it's always a joy to connect with like-minded people that are working towards the same mission and with the same passion.
Right. It is. Some of our friends think we're odd when we start talking about fresh produce and how passionate we can get, but it's great to meet others who share that. And you've been doing such stellar work for the past few years, past decade at least, I think. And really has made an impact, I think. But tell us about your background and how you connected to the produce industry. Did you grow up in it, or did you just
No, not at all. Actually, I studied Spanish in college, lived in Mexico, lived in Cuba for my immersion, portions of my degree, and came back to Indy, worked really hard to learn a second language. And I was like, gosh, what am I going to do with this degree? And so for 1 year, I taught high school Spanish. And I liked it, but I didn't love it. And if you don't love it, you should not be, teaching is one of those careers where it's very passion driven. And beyond that, I kind of felt like I was losing my language skills because I was teaching such an introductory level of Spanish. I wasn't able to use the language at the level I was hoping. And so with that, I started looking for jobs in Indy where I could speak Spanish or where I thought I could use my second language skills. I had a job offer. We already talked pre-show about how much I enjoy basketball. So I had a job offer on the table, and anyone from the produce industry who's tuning in, you're going to love this. My reasoning for choosing produce, but my offer was from the Indiana Pacers and Indianapolis Fruit Company. And Indianapolis Fruit Company had just started an initiative that they were calling Hispanic Market Sales, because at the time when I was looking for the job, it was 2005. And there was this real influx in Indianapolis of bodega style markets, these little Mexican grocery stores. And almost all of them were driving up to Chicago to get their produce from the terminal market. None of them were sourcing it locally. And when you walk into those stores, they don't have a huge mix of fruits and vegetables, but we're talking about a tiny store with a, like a 12-foot produce case, but they can sell 2 pallets of Roma tomatoes on a Saturday,
Wow.
And so there's a lot of opportunity with that demographic and that type of retailer. And so they were looking for people with the language skills to essentially start that entire division at their company. Wow. They had hired one gentleman where Spanish was his first language and English was his second, and they were looking for a complementary person. He was going to do the outside sales, and they were looking for someone who could be internal that was English first language, Spanish second language. So I fit the bill perfectly. And Mike Mascari, great man. Gosh, so much respect for him. He's now retired, which he so deserves, but he pretty much hired me on the spot. And I was like, well, I've got an offer from the Indiana Pacers too, so I just got to figure this out. And so I thought about it for a couple of days, and I chose produce because I did not want to work nights and weekends for the NBA. Was I surprised at how our industry never sleeps? But
that's funny.
So instead you chose to work day in and day out. Then,
that's right. I had no idea what I was getting into. And then I also had no idea how I was getting into this weird thing where like it becomes part of your soul, I mean, I wasn't even really making that much money. And that kind of leads to how I transitioned from sales to marketing. When my husband and I had our children, which was, our kids came shortly after our marriage. So we were young. I mean, I was probably within my first 4 years of employment at Indy Fruit. I went from single to engaged to married to mom of 2 kids. And fun fact, I was the very first maternity leave that they ever had at Indy Fruit because there was no women in that office. So they learned a lot. I learned a lot too with them. And, but when we had our second son, Mac, we're at this point, we're paying for 2 kids in daycare. And I don't even think I was making $40,000 a year, working, as everyone knows, like I'm on call as if I'm a cardiologist doing life-saving heart surgeries.
Well, you were to a degree, selling
sort
that
of, maybe. I was like, yeah, maybe, I don't know. But I just could not make it. I could not justify it any longer because we were literally, when we sat down and did our family budgeting, I was like, oh my God, I'm breaking even, if not losing money going to work with the expensive daycare, transportation, professional attire, all that, And so then my husband knew that I worked really hard, obviously, to learn that language skill, that I found this job that I loved where I was able to use it. And not only that, like I love the industry. You don't stay with it if you don't love it. You get out as quickly as you can if you don't have the passion. Right. So we agreed 1 month, figure it out, because in Indianapolis, there's not a whole lot of opportunity to stay in fresh produce. Like if I'm going to stay in this environment, I want to be here at Indie Fruit. Like I really thought I was going to retire right there in my cubicle on Mass Avenue on the Near East side of Indianapolis at Indianapolis Fruit Company. Like that is what I thought I was going to do with my life. And so I got word that the marketing manager was leaving Indie Fruit for an opportunity in Wisconsin. And so I made an appointment with my boss, John Cunningham, and he thought that the appointment was for me to put in my 2-week notice and tell him like, I'm just gonna be a mom, I'm not gonna do this anymore. I can't do it. And it was really unconducive to a young mom. I mean, we had that procurement meeting start at 7 a.m. Like I couldn't even drop my kids off at daycare until 7 a.m. So I was already like facing a lot of scrutiny within the office. A lot of these men, like they didn't understand, I was kind of this odd woman out. I was the youngest one, the only female. And then, oh my gosh, when I had to, leave my desk to go use my breast pump because I was breastfeeding my children, and they could take 25 cigarette breaks a day, but like you would have thought the world stopped spinning when Lori had to leave for 15 minutes. So like I said, it ended up being something where we all learned a lot together. And when I made that appointment with John, he was very surprised when I said, hey, I want to be the marketing manager. I hear Shayna's leaving. And his first answer to me was, well, you're just not qualified. And I was 30 years old at the time. I had 2 young kids, and dollar for dollar compared to all the other people in the sales office, I was selling the least amount of produce day after day, week after week, month after month at Indie Fruit. I mean, but you got to think I was taking care of like these bodega accounts and juice bar accounts. Like they didn't give me Kroger or Syndic's or any of these bigger, larger format accounts, unless of course someone got in a fight with them, then they ended up on my plate. It was like, this either works or I'm a stay-at-home mom. This was kind of the first time in my life I stood up for myself. So John tells me I'm not qualified to be marketing manager. And so I just look at him and I say it direct, but also, like not rude. And I said, well, John, okay, what qualifies you to be marketing director? And he didn't really have much to say. And he was just kind of looking at me, and I know I pissed him off when I said that.
But you had nothing to lose, really.
I have nothing to lose. I mean, they're going to continue to lose money coming to this job, or he's going to maybe hear me out. And thankfully he heard me out. And I said to him, I go, I am 30 years old. I have 2 young kids, one that's still in like soft foods. You know what you pay me. Every single purchase I make is a result of marketing because I don't have money where I can spend freely. And I said, not only am I like the number one shopper that our industry is trying to connect with, like every industry for the most part is trying to connect with this shopper avatar. And he just kind of took like, that kind of made him quiet. And I was like, seriously, John, when was the last time you went grocery shopping with 2 kids in the cart who want to eat cookies and you want them to eat broccoli? Like, give me a chance. I know how to do this.
Great. That's a great
and
story.
My assertiveness is really coming out. And I'm like, I am not only the most qualified person in this building to be the marketing manager. I took it as far as to say, I'm the most qualified person in the state of Indiana to be the marketing manager at Indie Fruit. And so with that, like he, and truthfully, as my story evolves and, we'll share some of it here on this show, but the male leadership at Indie Fruit did nothing but empowered me from day one, and that was really the first moment of empowerment when John, he kind of took a step back, looked beyond that, sales tracking sheet where I literally was in last place every single day of my career there. And he was like, you know what, you're right. Like you would be a great candidate to be marketing manager, and I'm going to recommend you to the executive team. And that's how the meeting ended. And then within 2 weeks, I got the job. And they made that announcement, and that meant that I moved from the cubicle to like an office within the building. And then also there was a pay increase. And so with that pay increase, that brought my family and I that financial freedom where I didn't have to worry so much about losing money going to work, or at least not profiting going to work. The first thing I ever built in a business realm was the Hispanic division sales. I had a great time, leaning into my passion for the Spanish language and the Hispanic and Latino culture, and growing that division of the company, which still exists today, which I'm so proud of. They still have that sales division at Indie Fruit, and we develop specs where they're even still they still even supply like Kroger Shelbyville warehouse with some of their like jalapenos and some other things, like literally forged during that time when Carlos and I were building that division of the company. So when I look back on where I'm at today, the first time I built something in that entrepreneurial fashion where you have nothing, you're trying to start something, that was the Hispanic sales division at Indie Fruit. The first time I had to stand up for myself was when I fought for my qualifications to even be marketing manager. And then it was like school of hard knocks. I was going a lot off instincts. I actually knew nothing about marketing. I studied liberal arts in college. I remember being in these meetings with the other management team, and they would say things like, when I look back on my notes and when I think about how I felt, like I did not know what ROI meant. And I remember writing that down with like a question mark on my notebook. And then like some of these other terms were being thrown around, like a lot of stuff about like P&L and budgeting and, stuff that when you're managerial classing up, you have privy to. I didn't have privilege to that when I was sitting in the cubicle being an order taker. So I actually went back to school and took a marketing 101 class, used some of that extra income to pay for it. So I would feel like I was confident enough to actually contribute in these meetings, because all I was doing was just like writing stuff down that I didn't know what it meant with big question marks after it. And I was like, oh my gosh, I've got to get smarter or they're going to fire me. And so I went back to school and took just that one class just so I could talk the language that all of these other, leaders who frankly were all old enough to be my father. Most of them had family ties to the business. So I already felt like the odd person out, and I didn't want to feel like the odd person out due to my acumen as well. So I share that because anyone who's listening, like you should always invest in your education. Like I'm a huge believer in eternal learning. Don't let your education and your quest for knowledge end when you graduate.
That's a great story in so many ways. I have 3 daughters.
Yeah.
And I'm going to relate that story of how you stood up for yourself and, were assertive in the right way.
Who's going to, right?
Yeah, exactly. In the right way. It's a great, inspiring story there. And then, I can kind of see the beginnings of the produce moms or the produce mom, which is how you started. Yeah. And you later became the produce mom. Tell us about that. Tell us about the beginning of Produce Mom and how it became
so it
plural.
Launched in 2012 and this is like my favorite thing in the world to talk about, so you'll have to cut me off if you like, or scoot me along. So it was 2012 first of all. Okay, there wasn't a whole lot of like marketing as I was consuming it. I mean, I'm a millennial mom, so I was always consuming my marketing at that point digitally. And I'm the marketing manager. And literally part of my job was we would get these sales sheets from people like Sunkist or, other vendors, and they would talk about the citrus fruit. And then my job was to add the Indie Fruit logo to that sales sheet, go down in the basement, run the laminator, put it in these POS packages, and then put them in the mail slots for the drivers to take on their routes. And I'm like, I was a intern at the Heartland Film Festival when I was in college, and I was doing more compelling marketing as an intern. And so between my I wasn't really confident in my education. And then I'm like, if I was in charge of this place, I would totally get rid of the marketing department. That's kind of what I thought every day when I came to work. And I was like, ooh, that's not a good place to be. If you're an employee and you're like, I'd fire me, I wouldn't just fire me. I'd get rid of the whole department that you're managing. But, So I knew I had to come up with something, I was like, this isn't going to cut it. Like they're wasting money on me right now. And they're wasting everyone's time doing this cutting and pasting of logos and laminating. And so that's when I really dove into how is our industry telling their story. And 2012 is kind of like what today is with podcasting. 2012 was with blogging, and there was no real blogs in the produce industry. I mean, there were a few that were out there, but they were very they almost read like Wikipedia reads, they were very stale. Or they had this voice that the majority of people cannot connect with. They were from the voice of the health end of our industry. Like I love that our food is the healthiest food that you can put in your body, but I really don't think that the average American needs another person telling them that fruits and vegetables are the healthy choice.
Eat your veggies.
I don't think it's moving the needle. I don't think it's what's inspiring people. And as a 30-year-old mom, where some nights I just want to eat Cheetos and some mornings my jeans don't fit, I'm like, the last thing I need is someone online telling me to eat more fruits and vegetables. I don't need another voice of authority here. I just want to have an enjoyable experience with my food, get my kids excited about, fruits and vegetables, and curb the cravings myself and live a healthier life myself. But I don't need to do it with a doctor or a dietitian or, another voice of authority is how I was thinking. Right. And so that sentiment really was foundational in how we put this all together. I remember when I bought the domain, I actually was originally wanted this business to just be Produce Mom. There was no but the domain was claimed. We now own the domain, but at the time in 2012, it was claimed. I was like, shoot, what am I going to call this thing? That's the perfect name. And I mentioned early in our pre-show conversations, I went to IU. And so I just was like, well, Ohio State's super annoying. And they call themselves the Ohio State University. But it's unforgettable. Yes, if you, to the point where people just know, if you say Ohio State, it's like, oh, you mean the Ohio State. Yeah. Yes. And so I was like, okay, I can add the article, and I guarantee you the domain is available. And I guarantee you it's cheaper too. And it was available. It was $5.99 on GoDaddy. So I bought it. And then I just sat on it because I didn't know how to pitch anything to my bosses. All of my bosses had kids my age. They all, they were I perceived most of them as smarter than me. They were, they're very involved in the family business. And I was like, I don't know how to do that. But really what I was doing in that quiet time at night, after I bought that domain, I was mapping out an entire business plan, not even knowing it. I was doing all this market research. I was identifying the fact that there's nothing out there that talks about fruits and vegetables in a friendly tone. Everything that you can find in the produce department talks about the brands in the produce department. I learned those lessons from the retailers, really. And also from my job at the warehouse doing cycle counts and everything. You see all these different brands. I'm like, I didn't even know that different brands of honeydew existed. But I knew when I was trying to sell honeydew to Ladue Market, and, in one of the wealthiest areas of St. Louis, if I didn't send him King of the West honeydew grown by Turlock Fruit Company, he didn't want honeydew. And so I'm like, okay, I got to learn more about this stuff. And so it's all this whole journey at Indie Fruit is so just the foundation upon which it was all built. It was a Friday afternoon. The consultant was in the office. He called me to the corner office, Mike Mascari's office. And in that office, when I got in there, it was the consultant, Mike Mascari, who's at the time was president of the company, Dan Casaro, who's vice president, EVP of sales and marketing, and boss John Cunningham, who was director of sales and marketing. And so I walked in, I was like, oh my God, they finally figured it out. They are getting rid of the marketing department and they're firing me right now is what I was thinking. And instead, and maybe they were going to fire me. I don't know, but the consultant was fielding the questions. It felt very much like that movie with the stapler, Office Space. And, it's all coming from the consultant. He's like, Lori, how are you liking your job? I'm like, oh, I love it. Really deep down, I was like, you should get rid of everything I'm doing. It's not necessary. And then And then they were like, well, do you have any ideas for our 2012 marketing program? So they totally opened the door for me. And I was in this desperate spot where I thought, if I don't unleash the idea I have and everything that I've like been sitting on for literally, at this point, I'd been sitting on it for about 3 months. And I was like, yes, I do actually have an idea. I bought a domain and I think we should start a blog and we could call it The Produce Mom, and I'd be willing to author it. And it could be loosely based off my life as a mom and a produce industry professional. But I think we could, really talk about the brands in this warehouse and probably even make money off of it. They were just crickets, And so Danny was the first one to talk, and he said, well, what's a blog? And, and I said, well, it's like a website, but it reads more friendly, as if it were like an email from a friend. And it's very informative. And it's usually meant to be something where if you want to learn something about any topic, you can find a blog that can provide you with that information. And so at that point, they told me, okay, go back to your cubicle and write a blog. Like, they didn't know what they were evaluating. And so I went back to my cubicle. It took me about 15 minutes. It's still published on the website today. It's called Who is the Produce Mom? And I wrote that in 15 minutes at my cubicle on a day when I thought, like, if this doesn't go, I'm totally getting fired. And if it goes, then maybe I'll be doing some real marketing, And when I brought it back, I printed off enough copies for all of them to have one, and they all read it. And, I was totally watching their facial expressions and body language, and it was pretty positive from all of them. It was a lighthearted, kind of funny, set the tone for what could be a bigger series of blogs. And the first person that spoke was John Cunningham, and he put the paper down. He said, I love it. And so then Danny spoke again. He's like, well, how much does it cost? I said, well, I already bought the domain for $5.99, and I'd be willing to transfer it to the company without a charge. And so, just my time, because we could use a free WordPress template to get things started.
And they go, what's WordPress?
Yeah, well, and I mean, they didn't care at that point. Yeah. They heard the word free, their favorite F word, and they were like, yep, we're in. So I got the permission to start, and I had their full support for the first 3 years that the producemom.com existed online. And then it was April of 2015. So, it launched in January 2012. All the way until April 2015. And it did, I mean, trust me, if it didn't monetize, if it wasn't bringing in income, they would have killed it a long time before they did. We were able to work with vendors in exchange for either ad purchase, privileged purchase prices, like an ad buy, but they would give us premium pricing, so to say, or they would actually just pay cash in exchange for exposure on the producemom.com. It was a marketing spend for them. And I'm undoubtedly certain that the initial growth and interest from the vendor community came because this blog is backed by a warehouse that represents hundreds of millions of dollars of POs. I'm savvy enough business person to know that is why the Produce Mom was initially very appealing to our industry. Because you got to think, when I started this thing, the majority of the audience, it was like me, my friends, my mom, her friends, maybe a few people from Indie Fruit. And that was about it. Like, we were regional at best. Well, the first campaign we did, where we actually were working with a vendor that was putting some resources behind the data, was with Oppenheimer. And we were promoting Jazz apples. And again, this is content, like, you can go back in the deep archives of our social media or our blog, and you can see it was a Jazz apple photo contest. So
Teresa might have been involved in that. Were you involved?
Were you?
Teresa?
Well, I did represent the New Zealand apple growers, but I think I was already not working with Oppenheimer at that point. If it was 2012.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it was 2012 or 2013 when we did the Jazz apple. It was probably 2012. Yeah. It was definitely 2012. It was the very first campaign we did. And I think we titled it, "How do you like them apples?" or something like I would not use today. But It totally flew with the guys at Indie Fruit. They were like, sounds great. But then we, so to enter the contest, you had to take a photo with like this Produce Moms cutout, totally inspired by I think it's called Flat Stanley, like the thing that the little preschoolers do. Yeah. So Produce Mom cutout that we personalized to Jazz apples. And then you also, of course, had to buy a Jazz apple. And it was very grassroots. I mean, I don't even know if we had more than 100 entries, but what Oppenheimer saw was an over 100% increase in sales in the Indianapolis market compared to previous year. Wow. And so that's when they were like, this is something, this is worth. And so we were able to then use that as a case study, so to say, for other partners. And for a lot of these folks, we weren't talking about huge investments at the time. Sometimes it was like, buy the $100 Visa gift card that we could give away and drop Indie Fruit a bone, either in pricing or, pay $1,000, $2,000 for the marketing investment. And that came back to them when they had that kind of influx in sales, and so it was really great to see it grow. 2015, essentially, they were done with it, right? I mean, we weren't really adding capital gains. We were paying my salary, paying the legal fees and the support staff salary, but we weren't making a ton of money for the, corporation. And
it wasn't helping sales much either, or
I don't know. I mean, I think that's always
hard,
like the big battle in our industry. Exactly. I mean, it's like your sales guys want to know how marketing's, right, driving sales, and marketing's like, well, without us, there wouldn't be, I mean, it's just kind of like that's the never ending debate in our industry, is marketing versus sales. And I really think that it's kind of like chicken egg. Like, I mean, come on, we are all smart enough at this point to know that they are complementary, that we do need both of them. And when you consider the way people are consuming their content and learning about their food, or consuming their information, I should say, and learning about their food, we have no choice but to market our products and market our industry and do it very well and in on trend ways. So, I'm sure that was part of the argument, but it was a situation where, I think in hindsight, I think they were wasn't making a ton of money. If it was making a ton of money, there's no way they would have gotten rid of it. B, they shortly after, 2015 was when this was all going down. Shortly thereafter, Indie Fruit actually went through a acquisition sale. So they could have been simplifying their portfolio to prepare for that. I don't know. But what I do know is they took me out to eat on a Friday for lunch and told me to bring my computer. So it was another one of those things. I was like, oh, great, I'm getting fired. Second time I thought they were firing me. And I'll never forget that lunch. It was Greg Casaro, who was CFO, Dan Casaro, who was at that time my direct boss. He was the EVP of sales and marketing, and I love them both, and I still love them both. And I think it was as hard for them as it was for me to hear, to be honest with you. It was just the three of us sitting at a restaurant on Mass Avenue in Indianapolis. And Greg said, like, at this point, the Produce Moms, we had launched a school show with the Colts. Like, we had a lot of buzz going on with the brand. And we had a portfolio of about 20 different vendors that were working with us on contracts for marketing. So it was, they knew how hard I had worked too. I mean, there were so many days where Danny, his wife, was one of my mentors. So at least one day a week, I actually worked in her home office. And there were so many days I'd still be working at Danny's house when Danny would come home from work, and I would still be working in his home office. I mean, they saw that I was putting in the work, and Danny and Greg, it was Greg who talked in that meeting, and he said, it's amazing what you've done. And I knew there was a but coming. I just knew it. We are so impressed with what you've done. And he said, however,
not but.
Yeah. He said, Indianapolis Fruit Company is done with the Produce Mom. And I just started crying. I didn't want to cry in front of him. I had to get really tough skin to stay in that environment for 10 years. And so, like, none of them really ever saw me cry. But I just started crying. I couldn't stop the tears because all I could say to them, like, the only thing I could muster up to say was, well, where does that leave me? Because that's my only job. And they said, well, we're not interested in losing you, but we are not, so Sherry's this general counsel. She's crafted this document, and then they slid this document across the table, and I'm like, holy crap, like this is serious, because it's like a legal document. It basically has path A or path B. Path A is I stay employed at Indie Fruit, go transition back to sales. We sunset the Produce Moms. There was even like the press announcement that cited why we were sunsetting the Produce Moms. And like, there's no more, like, it just goes away. All right. Path B is I buy it, and it had the price, and the price was more than the home that my family and I live in. Wow. And so I'm sitting here looking at it, and at that, I mean, I'm not really making that much money. And
you paid $5.99 for it.
Yeah. But it's, it was work for hire. I mean, they supported it. I 100% credit them for the early success, but yes. So long story short, I looked at it and I slid the paper across the table to both of them. And I was like, well, in my exact words, I remember them so vividly. I said, I would be a caged animal going back to the cubicle. I'm buying it. I said, I just don't know how I'm buying it. I need to talk to Chip. Chip's my husband. And then like we left because I was like, I don't want this stupid salad, and I was like, I'm leaving. And so I took my legal document and off I went, and Danny walked me to my car and he's like, are you okay? I was like, no, I'm not okay. Like, I don't know what I'm going to do. And so but regardless, I came home, I talked over my family, God love them. They supported me. My husband was like, well, yeah, like, why not? And I'm like, well, why not? Because it's like more than the home we live in. Why not? And anyway, I cashed out my retirement. And then I couldn't get a loan from a bank because, we had a mortgage on our house. We didn't really have a good, household income at that point. And so I had to borrow money from family, which is also really like sticky, thankfully I was in a position where my father was able to help me out, and, him and my mom, worked very hard and lived a pretty humble life to where they could, and, he didn't hesitate, which, my dad passed away in 2018, and so, it's more than a job, it's a tribute at this point. And, and so but I remember that journey, it was April when I got the legal notice that they were done. And then I had, like 7 days to sign my letter of intent. And then after I signed my letter of intent to buy, then there was a whole nother round of paperwork, and it was like all financial. I could buy it slowly for 5 years. But during those 5 years time, like they would have access to banking. They would have access to my email, like pretty much everything. I was like, I'm not doing that. Like, I don't even own it, Yeah. And then the other option was I have to come up with the money. And what I knew was we couldn't afford the price that was on that paper. I knew that any way I sliced or diced it, like, we are not going to be able to do it. We're not going to be able to get that kind of cash from family. And then, we're going to I was having these acquisition meetings, and that was also really intimidating, but I'm very proud of myself looking back on it, because I'd walk into those acquisition meetings and I would be sitting across this table from a handful of people who for a decade were my bosses and my colleagues and my friends. And I'm like fighting for, and I'm representing the work that I did in my cubicle and in my office, and saying to them, I'm not going to let this die. Like, I'm going to figure this out. And I remember I got to the point where it was too much for me to do it alone, like this, just the sentiment of like 4 versus 1,
Yeah.
At the table was
sort of like today, 4 versus 1. Okay.
Well, this is a totally different vibe.
No,
but
no.
yes.
No, that's fantastic.
And so I came home and told my husband, I was like, I need you to come. I was like, you don't even have to say a word, but I need you to come, because I can't sit across the table from them as a party of one for another day. And so he came to the next meeting, and we have, Chip and I call it the binder of smoke and mirrors. It was the binder of why it costs what it did, and so we were going through the binder of smoke and mirrors, and Chip, I'll never forget this either. He just took that binder and closed it and then shoved it across the table. He said, what if we pay you cash in 90 days? Then what's the price? And I'm sitting here like, I didn't say anything, because I'm like, great idea, but like at the same time, like, where the hell are we getting this cash? And so they were like, well, we'll come back to you. Well, that slashed the price in half, where it was, we ended up still paying more for my idea than the home we lived in, but at least it was like just $10,000 more than the home we lived in, and so that with that price slashing and that negotiation that my husband came in clutch on, we were able to, by the time I cashed out my 401k, and then, I was able to borrow the balance from my parents, and I was able to give them cash in 90 days. Wow. And I will never forget how that felt to walk in there, and they made me bring a cashier's check, and I was like, oh my God, of course. And so but I came in with that. I was so proud. I was like, here's my cashier's check. It's not going to bounce. Like, here we go. Give me all the IP. And then off we went. And that was August 31st, 2015. And I didn't know what I was in for, I knew I had a lot of support. I also knew that if I failed, I was going to be, a lot was going to be at risk. Granted, I don't think my dad was going to file small claims court against me or anything like that. But my family needed my income. So if I wasn't contributing to my household, we would have lost our home, And so I really was fighting for everything I had to keep this thing going and alive. And the traffic the website had at that time in 2015, just to give you a scope of understanding of where we were versus where we are. We now get that traffic, the annual traffic. And when I took that leap, we now get that traffic about every 10 days on the website. So this is a fantastic story, and one much more personal than I expected. Thank you for opening up, but it's so inspiring to hear it and how you stuck with it. I loved what you said about it now is not just a business or a job. It's a tribute to your father. And that was lovely. Beautiful. That was beautiful. Mm-hmm. So, wow. I didn't mean to interrupt you. I just wanted to let you know how inspiring it is. And I appreciate you opening up. And I'm doing all the talking, but I know this is supposed to be a discussion.
No, we want to hear from you.
It's a great story. It really is.
Right.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you were the produce mom, without you.
And I think even still today, without me, there's probably not a brand. I mean, granted, there is a component of the brand that is lifeless and non-personalized to anyone. But when I go through strategic planning or when we do our annual team meetings, I always put that down on when we do the SWOT analysis. I put, me and every single quadrant of the SWOT, because I'm but it really is
for our listeners who may not know it, SWOT, it's a business analysis tool, strength, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And what Lori is saying is she's all of those at the Produce Mom.
I am.
Which if we were all honest with ourselves, that's true for each of us and whatever we're doing, but that's a great thing.
Yes. So, so the business, I remember in 2014, I just recounted this with my team. We today at the Produce Moms, that we are a team of 14 people, behind what we do, which, compared to a lot of businesses in this industry, it means that is so tiny, by the definitions of this nation, that's a tiny, small business. But when you consider where we came from, 6 figures of acquisition debt, me hustling this industry from a negotiated laptop because I couldn't afford a computer, on a borrowed desk from my aunt that I set up in my kids' toy room in our basement because I couldn't afford daycare, and just cold calling people all day long, hoping that someone would A, take my call, and B, consider working with the Produce Moms. It's I when I think back on those early days, that brings tears to my eyes, that we went from there to where we are today,
But you are exactly the type of person that most of the produce industry was built upon. Yes. They were all the men that worked 18 hours a day, 6 or 7 days a week. And, when I first started in this industry, a lot of the men did not have formal educations, but they were just smart and they had gumption. And you say you were like this person who, weren't a produce person, but you were cut from the same cloth.
I completely agree with you. And I think that's the only reason I'm still in the game. I think it's the only reason my business survived those early days of the acquisition. And
those guys recognized the same cloth, I think, too.
Absolutely.
Your story
absolutely.
about being at Indie Fruit, it sounded like, wow, she's one of us. So that was
totally, it took a while, but like I said, we grew together, we evolved and grew together.
But if you didn't say, I am the produce mom, if you didn't give him what for like that, I think that that also went to the fact that they knew that you had teeth.
Let's get back to the produce mom is where it was. That must have been a big step for you to now say, I'm not the only mom in this business. I'm going to share the spotlight with others.
Yeah, that was 2017.
Okay.
Only we did
2
the
years
rebrand.
after.
Yeah,
right.
We announced it Thanksgiving Day, 2017. And it was when I was just watching as like all of marketing was kind of shifting towards a more of a community focus. 2017 was the year that Mark Zuckerberg announced Facebook's new mission to be a community-centric platform. And, I was like, we got to make sure that people don't view the produce mom as equivalent to Lori Taylor. We got to make sure that people know there's a place here for everyone. The trademark slogan of this business is there's a produce mom in all of us. And I wholeheartedly believe that, if you too want to see more fruits and vegetables on every table, if you yourself want to eat more fruits and vegetables, if you want to see the people you love eat more fruits and vegetables, then you're one of us, and so I knew I had to do something. And I actually worked with a friend who's also evolved into a mentor, Karen Nardazza. She's with Moxie Marketing out of Salinas and Southeast Florida now is where she's stationed. But Karen, she represented Braga Fresh when they launched the Josie's Organics brand. And they were the very first brand partner, Rod Braga, with Karen's, suggestion or advice. Rod Braga called Indie Fruit, was like, we'd like to work with the produce mom. So, they were like, okay, we don't do any business with you. He's like, that's okay. I'm not necessarily interested in, we want to be part of the produce mom. And so they came in as a $25,000 sponsor of the brand, and they didn't sell one penny of produce to Indie Fruit. And Karen was the visionary behind that, because she wanted our influence and support as they launched the Josie's Organics brand. Great brand, by the way. Yeah. And Karen told me during that project, she said, if you ever need help with the produce mom, you call me. She's like, I really believe in what you're doing. Like, I want to continue to recommend it to our clients. And I just think that there's so much opportunity here, Lori. She said, well, come out to Salinas, because at the time that's where she was stationed. And so I did. It was there in those orange walls of Moxie Marketing where Karen and her team were like, I think you just need to add an S. And I was like, brilliant. Yes, you're right. Like, just add an S. I thought it was going to be really simple. So like, that was the most expensive S, all the legal and it was crazy, but
so that's where the S came from.
That's where the S came from. And, it really was the best decision we ever made. After we added that S, we got our enterprise-wide partnership with Kroger to help support the launch of Kroger Health and the Opt Up platform and their Food as Medicine initiative. Their marketing team told me no way this would be happening if it was one like the produce mom, Lori Taylor. If you dig into the PR archives, there is a press announcement quote where it's like, well, the produce moms represents all Kroger shoppers. I was like, oh my gosh, etch it in gold. That is exactly what we were after when we did that rebrand. It was really one of the best things I ever did as an executive, was give up that ownership of, the equivalency of my business to myself,
And the domain name with the S was still available.
Yeah, we got lucky. That was like the first thing I checked, of course. But at that time I was already buying, like, for the longest time, I was so paranoid. I owned like the produce aunt, the produce kid, the produce. I think I let some of those go.
That's why I couldn't get it.
If you tried, that's why. But there is, I definitely was able to add that, and we still maintain, even like if someone emails me, Lori at theproducemom.com, like I still get all the at the Produce Mom stuff. But yes, it was, no looking back on that executive decision. That was a good one. I've had plenty of bad ones. That was a good one.
Well, I want to explore again, playing off the name, the Produce Moms. And you kind of alluded to it earlier. Anybody who's passionate about getting fresh fruits and vegetables on the plate is a produce mom in a sense. And I know your efforts target moms primarily, but in reality, all the information you provide is useful for anyone: moms, dads, young singles, old singles, old college students, well, just about anybody who wants to eat healthier. Is most of your community moms, or do you get a lot of interaction with others outside that demographic?
Yeah, I mean, so the vast majority of our audience is, so I'd have to look at all the stats. So these are estimated stats, okay? But the vast majority of our audience, like over 60%, fall between the ages of 25 and like 45, okay?
That's great.
And then also, like the overwhelming statistic is about 75% of our community has children in the home. Okay. Now that doesn't mean that we don't have, I mean, we've got, we have followers in all the age demographics. We have followers in all the geographic demographics. But and also I'm like, I've had so many people throw me hate and shade. Like, what about the produce dads? I'm like, what about them? Start your own, like I'm pretty unapologetically passionate about motherhood.
So you didn't buy the produce dads? Come on.
I did at one point when I was paranoid. I owned it, but I think I'm pretty sure that was the first one I let go. Okay. And I'm not anti-dad. I just told you how much my dad meant to me. I'm married to the best dad. I had the best dad. I believe that fathers have an incredible role in the household, but I also don't think that, and even in a society where, inclusion and equality is so important, which we are certainly passionate about to the point where we became B Corp certified. But I'm also like, I'm not afraid to say we're community moms. Like I'm a mom. Everyone who works for me is a mom. We're pretty proud of the fact that we're moms. That's the number one thing that can, in my opinion, it's the number one characteristic that can unite so many women around the globe is motherhood. Now, that being said, I'm not naive to the fact that motherhood can be a painful point for people. There's a lot of people who battled to become moms or never successfully could. I had 4 miscarriages between Joe and Mac. It was brutal. I hated everything about babies during that time frame. And then there's also people like you're dealing with grief or abuse or who knows what, or motherhood could be a pain point for you, and so I certainly, as the captain of this ship, I have to be mindful of that, and we've implemented strategies internally, whether it's something as, as simple as like, okay, Mother's Day is coming up, like in May, we plan out our content for the year. And, at the beginning of May, we send an email to our audience and we say, hey, Mother's Day is coming up. We're going to do a lot to celebrate Mother's Day here at the Produce Moms. But if you don't want it to come to your email, just click this button. We understand that you might not be interested in this. And, we had about 500 to 700 people click that button this year. And we will continue to offer that to our community. I also felt passionate, like we got to do stuff for like dog moms, and we have to do stuff for people who love fruits and vegetables, but have no interest in, and the family component of it. So, there's a lot of content on our website, whether it's the dog food recipes or the raw beauty recipes, or, even just the informational content, like how to cut a pineapple or a mango, like those, that's universal, applies in every household. And then of course, if you're interested in baby food stuff, we've got an ebook that's, literally 6 months of baby food recipes. So we've got you covered there too. That's the beast of media. That's the beast of actually being a community-centric brand. You have to think about all those nooks and crannies, and while still staying true to who you are. Like, I'm not going to change the fact that I'm a woman and a mom, Right. I'm proud of that. but I'm also going to be an empathetic enough leader to realize that we got to do more than just keep shoving mom in people's faces, so that's how it evolved, and how I hope everyone who encounters our brand feels like they have it feels like it's a beneficial, beneficial entity in their life. I want our brand to bring joy to every person who encounters it.
Right. And that was my point, is not that I thought you should change your focus or your target at all. I think that's a very important target. But that when I go to it, I'm not a mom. I was a dad. I am a dad.
Yeah.
They're all grown now, so I'm not worried so much about what they're putting on their plate. At least I have no influence or very little influence. But, I loved the site from the very first time. And I think, I remember first reading about you in some of the trade journals, probably in that 2015 time period, the first time. And then we met at a couple of conferences very briefly. So I don't know if you remember, but we did meet a couple. But so I became a fan of the site.
Thank you.
And your newsletters are fantastic. You've got a lot of great content there that has been very helpful for me to inspire me to get more fresh fruits and vegetables. So congratulations on that. I was just curious, how, it sounds like your audience is diverse, but both male and female. And I think it should be, because there's a lot of great info for that. So, but let's talk about those challenges that moms face, especially maybe picky eaters, which I know one of your latest podcast episodes was about that. And what are the challenges that are for moms and dads and others putting fresh fruits and veggies on the table, and how can they overcome them?
I think it's a challenge for all of us, right? Like, it's not just our kids. When you look at the consumption data, approximately 90% of Americans are not eating the recommended amounts of fruits and vegetables. That includes all ages. Okay.
Right.
So I think I come back to, like, food is so cultural, right? And at this point, I've got a middle schooler and a high schooler that my children have grown up with the produce moms. So, but I can tell you right now, like, my kids, every year they host the fantasy football draft here at our house. And if I'm not serving, like pizza or chicken wings, like they're out of here. So the fantasy football party took place a couple weekends ago here at our house. And here's my trick that I always tell people. Like, don't deprive yourself or your loved ones from these iconic foods that are part of our lives. Like, when was the last time a bunch of teenagers were gathering around and they were like, let's order salads from Panera? Not happening. Like, these kids want to order pizza, let them order pizza. Let yourself enjoy the pizza or the nachos or whatever it is. But if you can commit to the one simple rule that we kind of say, like, this is our secret sauce at the Produce Moms. Anytime you're prepping food, anytime you're serving food, make fruits and vegetables the very first thing that you prep and put on the plate.
Oh, wow.
And that can be at the micro level, like you're making dinner for your family, or it can be at the macro level where you're entertaining 12, 15-year-old boys for a fantasy football draft, And I see it time after time where if it's what is available first, it's what is consumed first, is the fresh fruits and veggies. Yeah. And I also have a rule like that I've implemented. I think it's just kind of like a walk the talk type of rule. Every time food is served in my house, fruits or vegetables have to be part of it, period. Like, it might be a can of green beans because I'm like totally overwhelmed at night and I don't have a lot of time, or a salad kit, or it could be something more elaborate, like a true fruit buffet or whatever, but I always make sure that fruits and vegetables are available. And I always make sure that that's a top priority when I'm menu planning for anything, and I'm not really a meal prepper. I don't really have time for that. I feel like my life is all over the place between work and household. But I undoubtedly, like, you plan your meals, even if it's just when you're grocery shopping, and I always make sure that fruits and vegetables are part of it. And you know what? Like, it is the most affordable way to feed a crowd too. And I know that there's a lot of disagreements with that sentiment, but I truly believe that fruits and vegetables are the most delicious, nutritious, convenient, and affordable foods. That path to purchase, like, really isn't finished until it's in someone's mouth. And that is That's where we feel our downstream effect is at the Produce Moms. You know, everyone in this industry is working so hard to get it on shelf at grocery retail or get it in the ads. Like, our goal at the Produce Moms is to get it in the grocery baskets, but even the step further, like, we want to get it on the table. That's why when we went through the B Corp process, we restated our mission as we want to get more fruits and vegetables on every table, period. You know, and because we believe when they're on the table, they will be enjoyed.
Right. Yeah. And we had Wendy Reinhardt Capsack on last week.
Yes, she was
been
just on my show.
Times. Oh, great.
Yeah.
And she emphasized both the eating first and also, you know, to that just because people are buying doesn't mean they're consuming. Right. So it's great to have that reinforced with you. And maybe she stole it from you. I don't know. I'm not going to.
Oh, I think that that's a sentiment I'm happy to share. You know,
I'm joking. Wendy, you'll forgive me for that.
No, she's a good friend.
Yeah, and of course they are really heavy into, and I think they're probably one of the primary instigators of September being National Fruits and Veggies Month. I'm not sure if that was their creation because
it was. That was something they put together. Initially, it was Fruits and Vegetables More Matters Month, and now it's just Fruits and Veggies Month.
Right. So what are the Produce Moms doing to celebrate?
Well, I'm personally an ambassador with PBH
That's right.
for their Have a Plant movement. So I'm one of the Have a Plant ambassadors. So we always, you know,
you celebrate every day of the year. So it's really, how can you ramp it up anymore for September? I don't know, but they do have a great platform with a lot of recipes. But let's talk about the Produce Moms website. There are some fantastic recipes there. Over 600 recipes I saw. I love the way you organize them too and give the filtering. You know, you can filter out by category or what the fruit or vegetable. Tell us a little bit about that.
I'm glad that you like that. I like it. I think it.
One of the things I love about it is, you know, you got something in the fridge and you're afraid you're going to waste it. We talked about we buy too much. Oh, pop on that site, click, you know, whatever the vegetable or fruit is and find the recipes. So what are some of your favorite recipes, Lori, on your site? That's probably too hard of a question. It's like, which is your favorite child? Is that one of those
I have no, not necessarily. Let's be real. Food is so cultural. Everyone has a favorite food, right?
Yeah.
And I certainly have a favorite recipe on the website. It is absolutely hands down the caprese pasta salad. I make that like at least 3 times a month. It's the only recipe I make consistently from theproducemoms.com. Recently, and it's funny, you're gonna be like, oh, Lori really likes her pasta salad. So we just published a recipe with one of our brand partners to celebrate rave apples, and it's a tortellini pasta salad with rave apples. I actually just made it on the morning show this morning. It is delicious. It's so good. So those are probably 2 of my like kind of go-tos if I'm the rave pasta salad is new, but I'm telling you, it's going to be in my rotation. And then I would say there's
what kind of sauce is on that? It's a tortellini with apples. Is it a white sauce,
spinach,
Alfredo or something?
Yep, and it's just got a lemon vinaigrette. It is so good.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
And then I have there's a couple different sweet potato recipes I really like. There's a dish that we do. I love the presentation of food. Like when people come to my house for dinner, so many people are like, oh my gosh, it's like the best restaurant in town is Lori's house. And I really make pretty simple food. A lot of times it's just like, you know, a lot of fresh food. The presentation is always on point. We did a recipe, I think it was for last year's holiday season, and it was a spiral sweet potato bake. And it's just beautiful on the plate. And I mean, I love sweet potatoes. I know that like the North Carolina crew here with me today has to agree, right? But I love sweet potatoes, and especially like oven roasted, and they're cut scallop style. Oh my gosh. And so that is a great recipe, very easy. It's a wonderful way to elevate your like a traditional holiday dish, and also put sweet potatoes on the table that aren't just loaded up with added sugar. So I'm a huge fan of that dish, especially as we look ahead to, you know, colder weather. And then there's a celery salad I really like, but you know, we need to redo it because it's a celery salad, the celery Parmesan cheese, and it's got a vinaigrette, and I really like it with a champagne vinaigrette. And one of my teammates, God love her, I love her, like I'm not mad at her. I didn't specify to use the champagne vinaigrette. And so she used balsamic vinaigrette because like 9 times out of 10, that's the vinaigrette that we would use in a salad dressing. But it just changes like the appearance. You kind of, because it's a monochromatic salad where it's like these beautiful slight bias cut green celery with even using the leaves, and then it has Parmesan cheese, capers. I mean, it's really nice. And then when you add that balsamic dressing, it adds this like weird brown tinge. Like it really needs to be a champagne vinaigrette. So we'll get to updating that. But I highly recommend it. I just encourage you to sub champagne vinaigrette for the balsamic.
I guess more people would have balsamic vinaigrette on hand than champagne.
Yeah. I mean, a white wine vinaigrette works. Any white wine vinaigrette works fine. But yeah, you're right. More people would definitely.
I've bought champagne vinaigrette before, but not in a while. But I always have balsamic
on the celery salad. Yeah.
It sounds good.
So those would probably be like, if I had to pick my favorites, that was 4 different recipes. I really like those. I will tell you that my favorite section on the website, which we're spending a lot of time updating 2 sections right now. One is the produce directory. Like it's literally a catalog of produce. We're adding to it. We're backlogged right now because I haven't done my approvals. Sorry, team. I'm behind. I know I am. But A to Z, we're trying to populate like a database where people can just like a quick reference, how to select, store, and serve all the different fruits and veggies. So I love that. That's our produce directory. And then if you click on the categories of blogs, there's a blog category titled resources. And that's another category that I really love because that's getting into like how do I get my vegetables to last longer, and what does it mean to shop at a farmer's market, and things like that, where we really are able to kind of provide that industry expertise, which is truly the differentiator between the Produce Moms and the literally millions of other websites out there where you can find recipe inspiration. And so that investment in building out the resource catalog, that was something that I've been working, I personally have been working very hard on, because I'm like, we have to do more. On our homepage, if you scroll all the way down to the bottom, there's a highlight of sections where it says, I think it might actually even say resources, and articles. And those are like, we update that every week, 3 different options that you can look at. So please don't overlook those areas of the site, because I think they're wonderful tools.
That's theproducemoms.com, correct?
Yes.
Theproducemoms.com. Listeners, could check it out. You will be inspired and educated quite a bit. Well, we could go on talking all day, but I imagine you've got other work to do. And
I have a podcast interview for my show here in a few minutes.
Okay, so we'll let you go. Such a pleasure to have you on. Thank you for taking the time, and thank you for sharing what I thought was a pretty personal story. And
thank you for allowing me to do so.
It will be inspiring to our listeners, and in more ways than just inspiring them to eat fresh fruits and vegetables. I can't wait to share some of what you told us with my daughters, because I think they will get inspiration from that. So thank you so much. We wish you all the best. Happy National Fruits and Veggies Month.
Thank you. Same to you all. Thank you so much for having me, and best of luck as you continue to do what you're doing here at Produce Buzz. And I look forward to supporting it. And thank you to all of our listeners for tuning in. This great show, and you've got 4 amazing hosts here week after week. So make sure you like, subscribe, and share this show with your friends. Okay.
Thank you for that plug.
I always forget to say it on my show, but
that's funny. That's funny. All right. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
All right, everyone have a great day. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Well, thank you, listeners, for tuning in to the Produce Buzzers podcast, brought to you by Produce Buzz, the gathering place for lovers of fresh fruits and veggies. We hope you were entertained a bit and educated a lot about fresh produce. Be sure to join us next time, and please tell your friends to do so as well. Like, share, and comment on our Produce Buzz Facebook page, and check out our website at www.producebuzz.com. There you will find articles about fresh fruits and veggies, how to select, store, and prepare them. as well as lots of interesting facts about all the wonderful bounty the earth provides for us. Until next time, be fruitful and don't forget to veg out.